Before the Brotherhood was a brotherhood, it was a grieving Medjay in Egypt with a hidden blade and an unfinished list of names. 2,000 years later, it's a fractured global network barely held together by stubborn ideology, hidden compartments, and grief. In between, the Assassin Brotherhood has lived 100 different lives in 100 different cities, each branch shaped by the language it spoke, the empire it fought, and the local flavor of Templar boot pressing down on its neck. We're walking through the 11 most significant brotherhoods in franchise lore, from the founding hidden ones of Ptolemaic Egypt to the dying Russian cell that almost lost it all, the Egyptian Brotherhood. The Egyptian Brotherhood isn't just one of the oldest organized branches, it's the branch. Founded in 49 BCE by Bayek of Siwa, a Medjay grieving the murder of his young son, alongside his wife Aya, who would go on to become Amunet, one of the most legendary names in assassin history. They don't actually call themselves the Brotherhood yet. At this point, they're the hidden ones, and the philosophy is still being written in real time. Their 3 rough tenets, stay your blade from the innocent, hide in plain sight, never compromise the Brotherhood, are the original draft of everything the Levantine codifies 12 centuries later. Bayek wasn't trying to start a global secret society. He was trying to kill the men who killed his boy. The Brotherhood just sort of happened around him. Operationally, the hidden ones work out of bureaus carved into the rocks of the Sinai and discreet safe houses scattered across Ptolemaic Egypt. The signature tool is the original hidden blade, which at this point still requires a finger sacrifice as a mark of commitment, a tradition Altair will eventually abandon and Ezio will make fully optional. Bayek pairs his blade with Senu, his trained eagle, who functions as both aerial reconnaissance and emotional companion. The hidden ones favor extreme stealth over open combat, picking apart the Order of the Ancients, the Proto-Templar organization they're built to oppose, one corrupt official at a time. Their golden age is short and brutally efficient. Under Bayek and Amunet, they dismantle most of the Order of the Ancients in Ptolemaic territory, briefly ally with Cleopatra, and then turn against her when she chooses personal power over the principles she promised them. Amunet personally kills her years later in Rome, in one of the most famous off-screen assassinations in franchise lore. The downfall is gradual rather than dramatic. As the Order regroups across the Mediterranean under the rising Roman Empire, the Egyptian branch contracts back into Siwa and the deep desert, eventually fading into legend. By the time of the Crusades, the original Hidden One bureaus survive mostly as architectural templates for the branches that inherit the philosophy, the Levantine Brotherhood. The Levantine Brotherhood is where the franchise actually begins for most people. Altair ibn Lahad, white robes, Masyaf, the year 1191. But the philosophy here is the real innovation. After Al-Mualim's betrayal at the climax of Assassin's Creed 1, Altair spends decades formally codifying the 3 tenets and writing the Codex, roughly 30 pages of philosophical and technical breakthroughs that will physically travel through Renaissance Italy via Ezio 3 centuries later. This is the branch that turns a regional cult into a global ideology. Operationally, the Levantine Brotherhood is the Hashashin of historical legend. That's where the word assassin actually comes from. They operate from Masyaf, a fortress carved into a mountainside in Syria, and from city bureaus in Acre, Jerusalem, and Damascus. The hidden blade is now standardized without the finger sacrifice, thanks to Altair's modifications, paired with throwing knives, short swords, and the trademark white and red robes that turn them into walking visual icons. Eagle vision, the supernatural Isu-descended sense for reading people and environments, manifests strongly in this generation. They're stealth purists. Open combat is treated as a failure state. Their golden age stretches across Altair's unnaturally long mentorship. He lives to 92, partly thanks to studying the Apple of Eden, and the Brotherhood expands its influence across the Levant and into Asia. They produce some of the most famous assassins in history. Maria Thorpe, a Templar defector turned assassin and Altair's wife, Darum ibn Lahad, their son, and a generation of master tacticians. The downfall is one of the bleakest in the franchise. In 1257, Hulagu Khan's Mongol army sacks Masyaf. Altair, now an old man, seals his codex and his personal apple inside a hidden library beneath the fortress and dies there alone. The library stays sealed for 2.5 centuries until Ezio finds it during the events of Revelations, the Italian Brotherhood. Brotherhood. The Italian Brotherhood is the most famous, most celebrated, and arguably most narratively important branch in the entire franchise. Italian assassins have medieval roots stretching back centuries before the Renaissance, but the branch only fully explodes into prominence under the Auditore family lineage, Giovanni, Ezio, and their network of allies across the city-states. The Italian creed leans heavily into humanism. Protect the artists, protect the philosophers, protect the people pushing civilization forward against the Templars trying to lock everything down. Florence, Venice, Forlì, and Rome each become chess squares, and Leonardo da Vinci is essentially the branch's walking research and development department. Operationally, this is the branch that defines what most people picture when they hear the word assassin. Dual hidden blades, the Leonardo-designed hidden gun, poison blades, smoke bombs, the parachute, the crossbow, almost every iconic gadget in the franchise originates here. The signature operational style mixes parkour-heavy mobility with theatrical assassinations staged in crowded city centers. They also pioneer the modern recruitment network. Ezio's Roman Brotherhood operates as an organized cell system, with apprentices working their way up through ranks and being deployed to Spain, France, the Ottoman Empire, and the New World as seed operatives for new branches. Their golden age is Ezio Auditore's full mentorship, which stretches across roughly 40 years and 3 games. The Italian Brotherhood dismantles the Borgia papacy, restores the city-states from Templar control, and lays the operational groundwork for the global network as we know it. Ezio is arguably the most successful mentor in the entire history of the Brotherhood. The downfall comes after his retirement. Without his organizational genius, the Italian Brotherhood gradually softens through the 17th and 18th centuries, and by the era of the French Revolution, it's a shadow of its former self. The Tiber Island hideout in Rome eventually goes dormant. The Italian branch never truly dies, but it never recaptures the Auditore era either. Most modern Italian assassins survive as quiet caretakers of the lineage rather than active operatives. The Ottoman Brotherhood. The Ottoman Brotherhood is the cultural crossroads branch, and it knew it. Operating out of Constantinople in the early 16th century, this is the place where the Italian Renaissance, the Byzantine remnants, the Islamic world, and the trade routes of 3 continents all collide in a single city. The Brotherhood here reflects that. Its members come from every background imaginable: Turkish, Greek, Arab, Italian, North African, and the local philosophy emphasizes adaptability above all else. Stay your blade, sure, but also learn the language of whichever neighborhood you're working in, because Constantinople is functionally 12 cities at once. The signature innovation here is the hook blade, a hidden blade modified with an external hook that lets assassins zip along the city's countless rooftop wires, vault over guards, and yank enemies into combo finishers. It's a tactical answer to Constantinople's specific geography: dense, vertical, and full of narrow alleys and crowded marketplaces. The Ottoman Brotherhood also pioneers bomb crafting at scale. There are dozens of variants: smoke, shrapnel, blood vials, sticky bombs, datura-laced gas, and they turn alchemy into a fully developed assassin discipline. Yusuf Tazim, the local leader, runs the operation through a network of assassin dens scattered across the city, contested constantly by Byzantine Templar remnants trying to recapture their lost capital. Their golden age is brief but vivid, falling during Ezio's late career visit in 1511. Ezio mentors Yusuf. The two sweep through the Byzantine Templar infrastructure together, and the Brotherhood briefly dominates the city. The downfall, though, comes fast. Yusuf is killed at the Hippodrome by Templar agents shortly before Ezio leaves Constantinople for the final time. The Ottoman Brotherhood survives, but it never quite recovers Yusuf's swagger. As the Ottoman Empire itself stagnates over the following centuries, the local Brotherhood evolves into a more diplomatic and intelligence-focused role, gathering information rather than killing, surviving through patience rather than aggression. The Caribbean Brotherhood. The Caribbean Brotherhood is the wildest, weirdest branch on this list, and that's a genuine compliment. Founded in the early 18th century during the golden age of piracy, this is what happens when you take centuries of polished assassin philosophy and hand it to a bunch of pirates, runaway slaves, and renegades who don't really care about formal hierarchies. The Caribbean Brotherhood operates out of a hidden base at Tulum on the Yucatan coast and a private island called Great Inagua. Its philosophical core is freedom. Not order, not even justice, just freedom. Templars want to fence the world in. The Caribbean Brotherhood wants to keep it wide open. Operationally, this is the only branch in the franchise that fights at sea as a default. Naval warfare, shipboarding, and frigate-to-frigate combat are core skills. Edward Kenway's Jackdaw becomes their flagship. Land combat features 4 pistol rigs, dual hidden blades, cutlasses, and an aggressive blend of buccaneer fighting and assassin technique. The dress code is also a complete break from tradition: fewer hoods, more captain coats, more practical fabrics for tropical weather. Adewale, the freed slave who becomes Edward's quartermaster, eventually rises to master assassin and leads liberation campaigns across the West Indies, freeing thousands from Templar-aligned slave operations. Their golden age peaks under Mentor Atabai, with Edward, Mary Red, and James Kidd as the celebrity operatives. They secure the Observatory, an ISU device that could spy on anyone alive through a single drop of their blood, and keep it out of Templar hands for centuries afterward. The downfall is harsh. The Pirate Republic at Nassau collapses in the early 1720s, taking many of the public-facing assassins with it. Then comes the gut punch. In the 1750s, Shay Cormac, a colonial assassin turned Templar after a catastrophic mission, personally hunts down and kills Adewale in Port-au-Prince. The Caribbean branch never recovers. By Evelyn de Grandprez's era in New Orleans, it's already a memory rather than a living network. The Colonial Brotherhood. The Colonial Brotherhood is the most ideologically conflicted branch on this list. It never quite figured out which side of which war it should be on. Founded properly in the mid-18th century by Achilles Davenport, a Caribbean-born former master assassin who relocated to a homestead in New England, the Colonial Brotherhood operates across North America during the French and Indian War and the American Revolution. Its philosophical foundation is anti-imperial. Any Templar trying to consolidate power across the colonies is a target, regardless of which crown they happen to wear. That neutrality is also why the branch keeps almost dying. You make a lot of enemies when you refuse to pick a side. Operationally, the Colonial Brotherhood adapts hard to wilderness conditions. The tomahawk replaces the traditional short blade, the rope dart becomes standard for tree-based ambushes, and Native American influence runs deep through Connor's generation in particular. Eagle vision merges with traditional Mohawk spirit sense, and many operations work through indigenous communities rather than against them. Pistols, muskets, and frontier-era tradecraft replace urban parkour as the dominant operational style. The Davenport homestead serves as both training ground and refuge, a kind of rural Masyaf hidden in the New England forests. Their golden age is shockingly short, barely 15 years across the 1740s and early 1750s, and it ends in catastrophe. A young assassin named Shay Cormac, sent to retrieve a piece of Eden, witnesses Lisbon get destroyed by an earthquake triggered by the artifact. Convinced the Brotherhood is recklessly mishandling forces it doesn't understand, Shay defects to the Templars and spends the next decade systematically hunting and killing his former comrades. By the end of Rogue, most of the Colonial Brotherhood is dead. Achilles is broken, retired, and bitter when Connor finds him in the 1770s. Connor rebuilds the branch from scratch during the Revolution, but the rebuilt version is much smaller, and as Connor learns by AC3's epilogue, the country he helped birth has no real use for his people anyway. The French Brotherhood. The French Brotherhood is the branch that turned a revolution into a chess game. Centered in Paris, operating out of the Café Théâtre and a hidden underground sanctuary, the French branch's philosophy is the most politically literate of any on this list. Where the Levantine Brotherhood was theological and the Italian was humanist, the French Brotherhood reads like a political science department. They debate, they argue, they form factions, they hold internal councils with formal voting. Mirabeau, the mentor at the start of Unity, runs the branch as a kind of revolutionary parliament. Pierre Belec, his rival, thinks revolution should mean tearing the whole thing down and starting fresh. Arnaud Dorian gets caught between them. Operationally, the French Brotherhood pioneers the Phantom Blade, a hidden blade modified to fire short-range projectiles, essentially turning every assassin into a silent ranged threat in the middle of a crowd. They also experiment with the guillotine gun, refined smoke bombs, and various flintlock improvements. The signature operational style is social stealth at maximum density. Paris's Revolution-era crowds are some of the thickest in any game in the franchise, and and the French Brotherhood weaponizes them constantly. You don't hide in shadows here, you hide in mobs of angry citizens. Their golden age is the revolution itself. The French Brotherhood identifies Templar Grandmaster François Thomas Germain as the architect behind the Reign of Terror's worst excesses, and ultimately kills him in his own Templar vault beneath the temple. The downfall comes entirely from within. Mirabeau is poisoned by Bellec for being too moderate, splitting the Brotherhood between Bellec's radicals and the older council. Arnaud eventually kills Bellec but is exiled for years afterward. By the time he returns to active duty, the French Brotherhood is bloodied, divided, and exhausted. Napoleon's rise complicates everything further. By the mid-19th century, French assassins survive in pieces but never recover the influence they held during the revolution itself. The British Brotherhood. The British Brotherhood is the underdog comeback story of this list. By the mid-19th century, the Industrial Revolution, Queen Victoria, gaslight factories, top hats, all of it, the British Brotherhood is essentially extinct. Crawford Sterrick's Templars have systematically dismantled it over decades, and what remains is a single safe house running on willpower and tea. Then in 1868, Henry Green, born Jayadeep Mir, son of an Indian master assassin, invites Jacob and Evie Fry down from Crawley to help him take London back. Two twins, one decaying branch, one of the largest cities in the world. Easy. Operationally, the British Brotherhood reinvents itself completely for the industrial era. Kukri-style blades replace traditional short swords. Brass knuckles appear in standard kits. Cane swords let assassins blend in with Victorian gentleman culture while still being lethally armed at all times. The most important innovation is the rope launcher, a wrist-mounted grappling hook that lets assassins zip up buildings and zip line across streets, completely changing the verticality of London-style operations. Jacob favors gang warfare and direct intimidation, building up the Rook's street network as an assassin proxy force. Evie prefers traditional stealth and Piece of Eden recovery. Together, they cover both halves of what the modern Brotherhood needs. Their golden age starts the moment Sterrick falls. London is reborn as an assassin-friendly city. The British Brotherhood is rebuilt almost from scratch in under a decade, and the Fry twins become household names in the secret world. By the end of Syndicate, they're advising Queen Victoria directly and pulling discreet strings on imperial policy. The downfall is slower than most on this list. The First World War cracks the British Brotherhood badly. The brief WW1 sequence in Syndicate shows Jacob's granddaughter Lydia Fry fighting alone in occupied London, with most of the branch dead or in hiding. The Templars never quite finish the job, but the 20th century is a long, grinding decline that leaves the British Brotherhood significantly diminished by the modern era. The Spanish Brotherhood. The Spanish Brotherhood is the branch built almost entirely in opposition to one specific institution, the Spanish Inquisition. Operating across Andalusia, Castile, and Aragon during the late 15th and early 16th centuries, the Spanish assassins live in the most uniquely terrifying environment of any branch on this list. Every Templar agent has the official backing of the Church. Every safe house can be raided by inquisitors with full legal authority, and being identified means not just death, but very public, very theatrical death. The local philosophy reflects that pressure. Spanish assassins emphasize ideological discipline above all else. You don't survive Tomas de Torquemada by improvising. Operationally, the Spanish Brotherhood is the most parkour-heavy of any branch in the franchise. The 2016 film built its entire action style around Aguilar de Nerja's acrobatic mobility through Granada and Seville. Dual hidden blades are standard. The robes are heavier and darker than the Levantine style, designed to blend into the somber dress codes of late medieval Spanish cities. They favor rooftop chases, plaza ambushes, and theatrical escapes, partly out of operational necessity, partly because making the Inquisition look foolish in public is itself a form of psychological warfare against Templar legitimacy. Their golden age centers on the 1490s, with Aguilar as the era's defining figure. He personally protects an apple of Eden from Torquemada, foils multiple attempts to use it to consolidate Templar control over the newly unified Spanish crown, and becomes the symbolic master assassin of the Iberian Peninsula. The downfall is brutal. The Inquisition's purges across the 1490s and early 1500s decimate the Spanish branch, scattering survivors across the Mediterranean and the New World. Many flee to Italy and merge with Ezio's expanding network. Others end up in the Caribbean colonies, seeding what eventually becomes the Caribbean Brotherhood decades later. The Spanish Brotherhood itself survives in fragments through the early modern era, but never reassembles as a single coherent operation. Their diaspora, ironically, builds half the rest of the global network, the Chinese Brotherhood. The Chinese Brotherhood is the longest-lived branch on this list, older than most of the others, with roots stretching back into legendary antiquity. By the time most other branches even show up in the franchise, the Chinese assassins have already lived and died several lifetimes. The branch we get the most direct view of, though, is the early 16th century Ming Dynasty cell, the one that's almost extinct when Xiao Jun, the protagonist of AC Chronicles China, returns home to rebuild it. The Chinese philosophical tradition leans into balance. The Brotherhood isn't here to win. It's here to maintain equilibrium against the Templars' constant pressure toward absolute control. Operationally, the Chinese Brotherhood incorporates martial arts traditions that don't exist in any other branch. Xiao Jun's signature weapon is the rope dart, used as both a ranged tool and a melee multi-tool, alongside a hidden blade and traditional throwing knives. Stealth is the absolute priority. Open combat in the world of Imperial Chinese court politics means you've already failed your assignment. The branch favors infiltration of court eunuch networks, scholar circles, and merchant guilds, anywhere information flows. They also have the unusual distinction of having a documented mentorship line that connects directly back to Ezio Auditore. Xiao Jun trains briefly under Ezio in Italy after fleeing the purge that destroys her generation. The cinematic short Embers shows this final meeting. Ezio's last on-screen mentorship moment in the franchise is essentially handing the future of the Chinese Brotherhood back to the woman who will rebuild it from nothing. Their golden age is what Xiao Jun inherits and then has to dismantle, the Eight Tigers, a Templar-aligned faction of court eunuchs that briefly controlled the Ming court and slaughtered most of the Chinese assassins in a single coordinated purge. Xiao Jun hunts every tiger one by one and rebuilds the branch through sheer attrition. The downfall is cyclical rather than terminal. The Chinese Brotherhood gets purged, rebuilds, gets purged again, rebuilds again, across multiple dynasties, multiple centuries. It survives mostly by being patient enough to outlast whichever empire is currently trying to kill it. The Russian Brotherhood. The Russian Brotherhood is where the entire franchise's modern-day crisis actually begins. Operating across Imperial Russia in the late 19th century and through the chaos of the revolution into the early Soviet era, the Russian branch lives in the bleakest geopolitical environment of any on this list. Tsarist secret police, then Bolshevik secret police, then Stalinist secret police, in unbroken succession across decades. The philosophical core is survival under impossible conditions. The Russian creed reads less like a code and more like a martyr's diary. Operationally, this is the first Brotherhood branch to fully modernize. Industrial-era hidden blades, Mosin-Nagant rifles, Tokarev pistols, gas masks for chemical warfare-era operations. Nikolai Orlov, the protagonist of AC Chronicles, Russia, carries a hidden blade that doubles as an electrocution device, the franchise's first electrified assassin tool. The branch operates from cold climate safehouses across Petrograd, Moscow, and into Siberia. Their tradecraft is heavily intelligence-focused. By this era, they're as much spies as they are assassins. The geopolitics demand it. You cannot parkour through Petrograd in 1918. You can disappear into a factory worker's coat, though. Their golden age, to the extent there is one, is the chaos of 1917 and 1918. The Russian Brotherhood briefly is leveraged during the revolution, recovering pieces of Eden including the staff that ends up tied directly to the Romanov assassination. Then the downfall hits, and it doesn't stop hitting for an entire century. Nikolai Orlov flees Russia with his family. His descendants emigrate west. One of his great-grandsons, Daniel Cross, is born with a Templar-implanted sleeper command buried in his subconscious, a Brotherhood mole prepared decades in advance for one specific purpose. In the year 2000, Daniel Cross activates inside the modern assassin network, locates the global mentor, and kills him. The Templars use the intel from Cross to launch the Great Purge, which nearly exterminates the entire global Brotherhood in one coordinated campaign. By the time Desmond Miles is kidnapped by Abstergo at the start of the franchise, the Brotherhood is essentially in ruins. Everything that happens across the modern day flows directly out of the Russian branch's collapse a century earlier. Every regional triumph plants the seed of the next regional disaster, and the Brotherhood somehow keeps going anyway. Century after century, recruit after recruit, hidden blade after hidden blade. The Templars never quite finish the job. The Assassins never quite win. The creed itself just keeps moving from one set of hands to the next, picking up local accents along the way. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.